What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Battle City Games. Today, I'm bringing you a Firefist deck profile. This is a little bit of an older deck, but we did get a lot of support for it recently in Fist of the Gadget. So the deck's been updated a lot since the old days when it first originated. It can do a lot more combos now, create a lot more intimidating boards. And I just thought it'd be interesting to kind of bring you guys a current build based off the May 2021 ban list to let you know what this deck can look like right now. Now, before we dive into the video, don't forget to go ahead and like the video if you enjoy the content, and subscribe in order to keep up to date on all of our deck profiles. We do post new deck profiles as well as other content every single week to keep you guys ready to go when we start local tournaments and even regionals and YCS is back up. Alright, so without further ado, let's go ahead and dive on in. Move these out of the way. So first up is going to be Brotherhood of the Firefist Elephant. Of course, this is one of the cards out of Fist of the Gadget, and is just a great starter for the deck since it allows us to get another Firefist monster on board, as well as get some fire formations into the graveyard. Previously, this deck really struggled as being a one summon per turn deck, which is very easily disrupted. But now, thanks to some of the new extenders, we can get multiple monsters on board and make some pretty unique combos and cool inboards. So Elephant is pretty much a must of 3 of in the deck. Moving on from there, we have one of the classic Firefists that is still one of the best, Brotherhood of the Firefist Dragon. This card originated back in a time when Konami did not put hard once per turns on cards very often, which means that every time we put a new copy of Dragon on the board, we're able to trigger his effect again, and we'll be abusing that heavily in order to spam the board with Firefist monsters. Again, Dragon, just one of the absolute best Firefists for what he can do by special summoning one back from our graveyard. Moving on from there, we have triple Brotherhood of the Firefist Raven. This is another one of the classic Firefists that previously was not very good. When he's sent to a graveyard, we get to set a fire formation directly from our deck. Now, before the time of links, it could be hard to get him directly into the graveyard, so it was more of a delayed effect. But now that we can just summon and link him off, that is an absolutely crucial effect in order to get our plays started if we did not open with something like a Tinky or one of our other fire formations that we need. Moving into the 2 of monsters that we're playing, we have 2 Panda. Panda is a great extender for the deck that we can actually summon on our opponent's turn as well when we activate some of our effects. The important thing to remember, though, is when we use Panda, we are locked into only Firefist monsters for the rest of the turn, so you have to be cautious of when you decide to trigger his effect. Usually we'll be looking to add him on our turn and then hold him to summon on our opponent's turn. We are also playing 2 Rooster. Rooster is still just one of the best Firefist monsters to be special summoning out in order to allow us to add another Firefist from our deck to our hand. And then his ability to send a face-up fire formation to the graveyard to set another one just allows us to cycle through some of our formations in order to utilize all the effects that we need to in any given turn. Another card that I see some builds choose to run, but some prefer not to, is actually Brotherhood of the Firefist Coyote. Again, this is another card that kind of fell by the wayside when it was first released. What he does is if we control a face-up fire formation spell or trap card and no monsters, we can just special summon him from our hand. He's a level 5, 2000 attack monster. The important part here is now that we have link summons, we can just use Coyote as one of our 2 needed materials for Eagle. So even if we don't open up great, if we don't hit our Elephant, we can still potentially get into our Eagle to get our plays going. And then for one of our honorary Firefists, we have double Red Resonator. This is the starter card that you want to see most often. Red Resonator, when it is normal summoned, allows us to special summon a level 4 or lower fire monster directly from our hand. Which again allows us to get into some of our plays, whether it's Eagle or whether it's going into our Horse Prince since he is a tuner. Red Resonator is one of your key starters. Moving into our one-ofs, we have 1 Buffalo, 1 Bear, and 1 Firefist Eland. So Buffalo has the ability that we can special summon him from our graveyard by sending 2 Fire Formation spell or traps. But if we have Eagle on board, we don't have to pay the cost of our Firefist monsters, which means he just becomes a free special summon. So he's one of the cards we'll be looking to dump to our graveyard when possible. Bear's just there for that little bit of classic removal if we need it, if we find ourselves going second or later on in the game. Just an easy way to remove one of our opponent's monsters in order to further our plays. And then Elan is the new ritual monster the deck received. If we're able to set him up, he does just offer a negate during our opponent's turn, and that's what we're looking for, is interaction on our opponent's turn. So we go with the 1 Eland. It is highly searchable, so you really don't need more than 1 copy. And then for our last 3 monsters in the main deck, we have triple Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring as our hand trap. As I always say, this realistically can be any hand trap you prefer. If you don't have Ash Blossom, you can go with something like Ghost Bell, Nibiru, even Psyframe Gamma. But I just like Ash Blossom for the utility that it offers, and she is the fire hand trap, so it does fit with the theme of the deck as well. Moving on into the spells, would not be Firefist if we didn't, of course, have triple Fire Formation Tinky. I remember the time when this card was limited. Luckily for us, it is back at 3, which gives us maximum searchability in our deck to give us access to whatever Firefist monster we need. And this is just going to be our utility card to get us whatever combo piece we're missing. We are also on triple Fire Formation Tensu. This is important, again, in case we don't open with one of our cards like Red Resonator or Elephant. This allows us to get that second Firefist monster on board. And then once we've used the effect, we can go ahead and send it to the graveyard if we need to use it to pay for some of our other effects, such as Rooster. Moving into our 2-ofs, to go along with the 2 Red Resonators, we are playing 2 Resonators Call. Now, with as important as I mentioned Red Resonator was, you may be wondering why I didn't just go with 3 of the monster itself and 1 call. But as you know, some people like to say, deck thinning is deck winning. So Resonator's Call serves the same purpose of getting us that Resonator while thinning out our deck to help us get to our key cards more quickly when we draw. From there, we have 2 Foolish Burial Goods. This is to allow us to send some of our fire formations directly from our deck to the graveyard in order to reverse search them once we bring out our Eagle. And then our last 2 of is going to be 2 Fire Formation Domai. Domai is our card that's going to allow us to ritual summon our Elan, but then the second effect is actually just as crucial, where when it's sent to the graveyard, we can target a Firefist monster in our graveyard and then special summon it back to the board. We'll be utilizing both effects in a lot of cases. If we have the Elan, we can utilize it to get that monster on board, or we can just send it to the graveyard with one of our mini effects in order to extend by special summoning something like a dragon back from the graveyard. And then for our 1-ofs, we have 1 Engine. Engine is our fusion card. It's going to allow us to go into our Firefist Fusion monster, which offers one of our better disruptions and is a card that we're going to be looking to go into whenever possible. And if it is sent to the graveyard, we get to add a Firefist back from our graveyard to our hand. So again, we can recycle some monsters if we have access to something like a Tensu where we can utilize an additional summon. We are on one of the field spell, Fire Formation atop Leaning Peak. Remember, this is always treated as a Fire Formation card, so it is just as searchable as any of our other formations. And it's much easier than you think to get to the 10 required counters to special summon a Beast Warrior monster from our deck or extra deck. Primarily, I like to use this to go into our fusion without having to actually fusion summon in order to get that disruption a little bit cheaper. We are also on 1 Gyoku. This is going to allow us to lock down one of our opponent's spell or traps, and since we don't have the opportunity to respond, this is great if you know your opponent maybe has something like a Scarlet Sanguine set and they're just waiting to trigger it. You can go ahead and put Gyoku down, lock down that Sanguine, and really disrupt your opponent's turn. And for our last spell, we are on the 1 Yoko. This is just a disruption option since we can pitch a card to target a face-up card on the field and destroy it. If you don't want to go with this, you could always go with a second Gyoku, or maybe an engine if you wanted. This is more of one of your flex spots. And then for our one and only trap, we are on the 1 Sento. This is our counter trap. It's going to allow us to negate our opponent's spell or traps. The reason we only need one is because thanks to Dragon, it is highly searchable, and we will find it almost every single turn. So that's going to do it for the main deck. Moving on into the extra deck, we're going to start with our one and only Link 1. That is Salamangreat Almirage. It'd be really great if there was a good Link 1 Beast Warrior that we could utilize in this spot, but we don't have one of those yet. But Almirage is here, so that if we do open that Raven and need to get it to the graveyard, we can just normal summon it, link it off for Almirage in order to trigger that effect, and then we just go from there. Moving into our Link 2s, we have Double Eagle. Eagle is a absolute godsend for the deck, since he allows us to not only not have to pay cost by sending our fire formations from the field to the graveyard, but when he is summoned, we can target a fire formation in our field or graveyard, return it to our hand, and then send a fire formation monster directly from our deck to the graveyard. So not only does it recycle some of our fire formations, like I mentioned, we can reverse search thanks to Foolish Burial, but it also allows us to get our Firefist monsters to the graveyard in order to be revived by something like Dragon during our combos. We are then also on the 1 Peacock. Peacock doesn't come up too often, but her ability to steal an opponent's monster can help get around some problematic threats that we don't want to have to deal with. If our opponent has any Link monsters on board, we can also steal those and then link them off to continue our plays as well. We have the 1 Tri-Brigade Ferajit. This is just one of our extenders, since we can utilize the ability to special summon an additional Beast Warrior, and all of the monsters in our deck do happen to be Beast Warriors. Just remember, this does lock you into only using Beast Warriors as material, but like I said, it's not going to affect us too negatively. And then for our Link 4s, we have 1 Apollosa Boa of the Goddess and 1 Access Code Talker. Apollosa is just a great card to end on. A lot of cases we'll be able to end on her with anywhere from 2 to 3 negates. And even if we do get disrupted by our opponent, if we can get the Apollosa on board, it does still provide us with some forms of disruption. And of course, Access Code Talker is just a great OTK option. I know Access Code is still a little bit pricey, but I do have a alternative for you. You could either substitute this with a Boral Sword Dragon for the OTK, or another card that I like in the deck but decided to cut for the Access Code was Bujinki Ahashima. Since when Ahashima is Link summoned, we are able to special summon a monster from our graveyard and hand and then exceed with them. So we can link into the Ahashima, special summon 1 back from our graveyard, 1 from our hand, and then go ahead and overlay into something like our Tiger King. And when we do summon to the zone she points to, we also get to destroy a spell or trap on the field, so we can use it for some additional forms of destruction at the same time. So again, if you don't have the Access Code Talker, don't worry about it too much. It's more of a flex spot than anything, to be honest. That's going to do it for our Link monsters. For our Exceeds, like I mentioned, we do have the Brotherhood of the Firefist Tiger King. This is not one that we're going to be going into every game. It's not like it used to be where you would really lean on your Tiger King, but the ability to go ahead and get any fire formation from our deck when we summon him, as well as the ability to negate the effects of all of our opponent's face-up monsters by detaching that material, kind of makes him serve as a Dark Ruler no more. And if our opponent's waiting for us to do something else, that Tiger King can either force out their response or prevent them from being able to respond as we continue to go through our turn. We also have the 1 Cardinal. Cardinal is one of my favorite Firefist monsters, actually, since he allows us to spin cards from our opponent's board. It's non-destruction, which is always great to have. And not only is it allowing us to spin, but it is also allowing us to recycle any of our Firefist or Fire Formation cards from our graveyard if we need to. Moving into some of our generic Link 4s, we have the 1 Dweller. With today's formats, this is still one of our best rank 4s we can end on in order to disrupt our opponent's turns. And one of the primary reasons we don't want to restrict ourselves to only Firefist monsters through Panda, because putting the Dweller on board is a very strong play. For our other rank 4s, we have the 1 Zodiac Shakanine and the 1 Trident. The Shakanine is because we can just make her with any of our level 4 Firefist monsters and then immediately go into our Trident. And the Trident is going to allow for us to have that disruption during our opponent's turn. And then to go along with these, this is kind of another flex spot if you don't have one or are looking for a cheaper option. But I do have the 1 Divine Arsenal AA Zeus. Again, since we have Shakanine and Trident, it's very easy for us to just go ahead and go into a Zeus if we need to deal with our opponent's entire board or feel like just sitting on a Zeus will provide more disruption than sitting on the Trident. But again, if you don't have Zeus, feel free to fill this in with maybe something like a Baguska to allow us for additional stun options if we get disrupted. And then for the last 2 cards in the extra deck, we do have the 1 Horse Prince and the 1 Swan, which is our fusion monster that I was mentioning. Horse Prince is one of our primary strongest opening plays. If we open with the Red Resonator, we can go into our Horse Prince and things just spiral from there in order to build up our board. And Swan's ability to provide disruption during our opponent's battle phase allows us to get some good disruption effects set up that forces our opponent to either deal with him or face the consequences when they try to go into their battle phase to deal with our board. So that's going to do it for the deck profile, guys. Let me know what you think. Like I said, I know Firefist is a classic archetype, but it's one that I personally have a lot of love for in my heart, since it does harken back to some of the slower, more back and forth days of Yu-Gi-Oh! Like I said, make sure you go ahead and give that video a thumbs up if you enjoyed the profile, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on any of our future content. Till next time, guys, I'm Teague with Battle City Games.